Hey, welcome back to True-Moto-Resto. This is another episode of the GSX-R 750 restoration, the Junkyard Slabby. Stay tuned. So I've got the all the bodywork. This is just cheap rattle can primer on here for the moment, and the only purpose for this is just to help to show up any imperfections in the bodywork. I'm going to be using a 2K sprayable primer. Well, it's in the can here. I can't even pull it out at the moment, but it's a Feather Light or Feather Coat by Evercoat. Featherlight Fill or something. I can't remember what it's called. But anyway, it's a 2K primer that you mix the hardener with and you put it in the spray gun. And that's what's going to be put on here at my buddy's paint booth. I'm going to be heading over there next week. But what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to, because it's not cheap. It's like, $50 a quart. I didn't want to be spraying that on only to find out that I've got, a pile of other work still to do because I missed a spot, or there's a rough edge somewhere, or there's a pinhole here or there. So the whole purpose behind this is just to help to show up any of the imperfections before I get there, and that way I just end up being a lot happier with the end product at the end of the day. So when you spray this stuff on, it just shows you you can just see I've already taken a pencil and marked up some of the imperfections here and there. But you can just see some of it is the difference to where the body filler is, but some of it is just kind of, you can actually feel it. There's high spots, and then here there's pinholes. So yeah, it's just more of it's not really a guide coat per se, but it just helps to show up any of the issues. The hardest parts to repair and fill are these egg-shaped bulges. I've been having a heck of a time getting these things to the right shape and contour. They're getting close, but they're not there yet. So and then I don't usually use the red spot putty unless there's like pinholes here and there. So that's all that's for. Again, most of that will get sanded off. That red, just so you know, that red putty, that red surface spot putty, is not good for anything else except for the tiny pinholes. And the reason being is it shrinks a lot. So this is it's 3M Bondo glazing and spot putty. You just got to be really careful what you use it for. Don't be using it to fill in significant low spots or anything like that, because it'll just shrink, and you'll put the paint on, and then a week later you'll actually see where you filled, because it just continues to shrink back all the time. So it's good for really small pinholes if you don't want to slap on another coat of surface filler, and as long as you're going to basically sand off almost all of it except for where the pinholes are. So I've popped all of these staples already with a screwdriver, so now I'm just pulling them all out with the pliers. Then we can take this old nasty seat cover off here. Alright. There we go. Well, the good news is the seat foam is not too bad. It's kind of chewed through a little bit at the top here, so it might be worth putting on a little bit of extra foam over this this front piece so that doesn't cut into the new vinyl. Maybe trying to re-glue that or something. Generally, it's not terrible. Seat cover, on the other hand, is pretty terrible, but it will, if nothing else, it will serve to create a pattern for the new one. The only thing I have to figure out now is whether or not I can actually do this out of a single piece of vinyl without any sort of way to, well, I'm gonna have to heat it somehow, I guess, but we'll see. I'll give it a shot myself, and if I make a mess of it, then I'll have to take it in somewhere. So there's the upper fairing. This is the area here that was completely snapped out, it was missing at the kind of, you may recall I welded all that back in. So there's the repaired fairing. It was, you know, cracked and smashed and here, there, and everywhere. So it's looking okay. I've smoothed off everything inside as well, so I'm going to give that a coat of white paint when it eventually makes its way to the paint booth. So quite happy with that, the way it's come out. All the other pieces are looking pretty decent as well. Just still doing some final sanding on the front fender, and then we'll head to the paint booth and put some high build primer on that. So the Bandit 1200 is on the operating table. So this is the organ donor, the heart transplant donor for the Skoal Bandit GSX-R. And so the first thing that I'm going to do with this, I'm just going to pull the front fairing off, just to give me better access to the spark plugs. I'm going to pull the plugs, just make sure there's no fuel in those cylinders. Put the plugs back in and just run it. Make sure that I heard it running when I bought it, but I just want it to run here before I start tearing it down, and then we'll get at it. Just take the whole thing apart and see how easy it is to pull the engine out of this sucker. Because I don't really want to have to take too much off the engine, but it looks to be a fairly tight fit. There's a little bit of room here at the top. And yeah, a little bit of room at the bottom, but not much. The oil pan hangs down pretty low on this side, I think, so it's possible I may have to drop the the sump there. That may not come out. The engine may not come out unless I take that oil pan right off there. But hey, we shall see how that works out. Well, wait a second here. Wait a second here. This is good news. I completely forgot to look at this. So we have a removable frame section here. That's very good. That's very good. So I think it should be fairly straightforward to get this engine out with that removable frame section. The whole bike will have to be stripped down to nothing, which is fine, because I'm going to part the rest of the bike out anyway. That's good news. I'm happy about that. So I drained out, actually I drained out all the oil, and it was not diluted, it was just overfilled. So that's been rectified. I wanted to do that before I attempted to start the bike up. So in order to get this thing up and running, the next thing I'm going to do is just make sure, I'm going to pull the plugs, make sure there's no fuel in any of these cylinders, because as I mentioned, when I was at the seller's house and we fired the bike up, it was definitely having issues with number one cylinder getting tons of fuel in it while the bike was sitting. It was just kind of, fuel had been trickling into that number one cylinder. So obviously a problem that needs to be fixed with that carburetor number one, but all I need to do at this point is just pull the plugs, make sure there's no fuel in those cylinders, and then I'll fire the bike up and I'll deal with going through the carburetors as part of the process down the road. So, and the reason I want to get it running here, again, is to make sure that, you know, I like to start these things on kind of a positive note. So if I'm tearing this thing down into its component parts to take this engine and transplant it, I want to do that knowing that while it was here, it was running. And then that way, if I run into any problems when it gets into the GSX-R, quite clearly it's something that I've done while I'm here, you know, putting the thing in, or maybe I've missed something quite simple. But I'd like to start knowing that this thing is running properly. I don't want to be chasing strange problems when this thing goes into the GSX-R 750 frame. So in order to avoid those kinds of issues, I'm going to take the wiring harness from this bike as well. That's going to get transplanted along with the engine. I'm taking the ECU from this bike, the CDI box is going to go with it, the coils from this bike are going to go with it, the switch gear is all going to go with it, likely the ignition switch is going to go with it. Anything that it takes to run this bike, this engine in this bike is going to get transplanted into that GSX-R 750. So what that will mean is I'm going to need to make some minor modifications, I hope, in order to the wiring harness to make the gauges function properly on the GSX-R, because 99% sure that the plug-in for these gauges on the Bandit is not going to be the same as the electrical plug on the GSX-R 750. Similarly with this bike, it's got a single headlight, so there's only one plug-in for the back of the headlight, whereas on the GSX-R there's two. So I'll have to fabricate something there. And a few other things like that I'm expecting along the way. But as long as it's kind of minor modifications, I'm okay with that. And wherever possible, I'm going to try to avoid hacking into this particular wiring harness. I just don't want to have to do that. I'd rather make modifications that can kind of be plugged in and unplugged, so we'll see how that works out. I just don't want to introduce unnecessary problems along the way. I would have liked to have taken the forks. I would have liked to have taken the Nissan brake calipers. If that was an easy transplant, I would have done that. But unfortunately, the upper triple clamp of this bike is a little bit different. And these forks will not fit into the GSX-R triple clamps. So I'm just going to leave the front forks and the brakes and etc. As they are on the GSX-R. The mounting points for these Nissan calipers are slightly larger, wider, further apart than they are on the GSX-R, so I can't solely transplant the brake calipers either. I could potentially use the brake discs if I need to, but that's about it. So I think for the most part, suffice it to say, the whole principle behind transplanting this engine is taking everything that's required for this engine to run in this bike and transplant all of that stuff into the GSX-R. That way I'm just not chasing kind of strange wiring or ECU issues, because I'm almost certain that the ECU on the GSX-R 750 would have slightly different timing for the firing of the cylinders, because if that's a short stroke 750 slingshot engine ECU that's in that bike, which it is, because it wasn't the original engine, the timing of that would likely be different than this 1200. So the whole thing just gets incrementally more complex, I think, if all I was doing was just moving the engine over and nothing else. All right, so let's see if this vinyl that just arrived for my seat cover is the correct color. I just need to be careful that I don't cut the vinyl. Unfortunately, if you only buy a yard of this stuff, they fold it. They won't put it in a roll unless you buy like 10 yards of the stuff. So unfortunately, it's been folded, which I think most of the upholstery places will tell you you do not fold vinyl ever. You at least my upholstery people tell me that. But anyway, it is what it is. The only way I could get a yard of this stuff was to get it this way off eBay, and so far I like what I see. I like the color. It's a beautiful thing. So there's the ideal color. Look at that. That is pretty much perfection. Very pleased. Sweet. Sweet. Excellent. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Very, very happy with that color. So I should probably open that up and then roll it up maybe. I don't know. Let's see. But that's really, really good. That's very, very, very close. And then these were on eBay as well. And I was kind of debating whether I should buy these or not, but price was good. So I bought them. Okay. quite nice. And if I end up not using these, like I said, the on the original bike, these I believe are, these are decals in dark blue. Yeah, it looks like a decal. But anyway, on my bike, only these two are these two here are decals on the Skoal Bandit, and this you basically got to paint it. So having this I can get the correct contour off the rear of the tail here. It'll give me the right shape and positioning for this paint, as well as for the decals and whatnot. And if I don't use this on the bike, at a minimum, it'll look pretty good on the wall. And there's the other one. It's got a stain on there, but that would probably come off without too much difficulty as well. All right, so I got the stain off there. So yeah, they look pretty good. Quite nice, actually. Not bad for, I think they're $69 Canadian each off eBay. So actually, the dark blue is paint on this as well. You can see right here where the spray paint kind of ends, and this is a decal. So spray paint, decal, decal. So the kit that I have is the same thing. These two are decals, and this will be paint. Okay, at the paint booth today, and I'm using this feather fill from Evercoat. It's a 2K primer. There's the hardener. I've just finished one coat. I'm gonna do one more coat on all the body panels. This is my new primer gun. It's just a cheapy guy that I got at Princess Auto. And Princess Auto is like the Canadian equivalent of Harbor Freight, I guess. But yeah, it seems to do a fine job. It was, I think, about $70 Canadian, something like that. But I wanted something with a 1.8 millimeter tip that would spray the heavier primers. This is like a filler primer, so I needed a different gun. It would be nice if the cup was just a little bit bigger. It's slightly on the small side, but the gun does an okay job. And all the bodywork is here. I didn't bother mounting most of it just because it's primer. When I actually do the finish coat, all of this stuff will be mounted up on posts so you can get everything properly. But for primer, it's fine the way it is. So yeah, there is an incredible amount of bodywork for slabbing. It's just unbelievable. 14 pieces in order to get everything painted. So yeah, it's madness just how much real estate you got to cover with when you're painting one of these old girls. So I'll let that dry a little bit longer, and then I'll throw in another coat. And the plan is I'll leave it maybe for about an hour after I get the next coat on. I'm hoping that it'll dry up pretty quick, and if it does, I'm gonna kind of flip it all over, and I'm gonna put a coat of white paint and clear coat on the underside of some of these panels. That way when I come back in another week or so to do the final finished paint, I don't have to worry about doing the underside. Right, so just put one coat inside these panels just to clean up some of the nasty yellow and black that was in here before. The goal wasn't to be perfect in here. It was just enough to, I mean, some of this I will get when I do the main paint. I'll be able to get underneath some of it as well, but I just kind of used some old paint that I had laying around just to get in there and clean it up. All right, there we go. It needs to be just a quick dusting of white inside is done. So I'm going to leave that here now till tomorrow. I'll come back and pick the stuff up in the morning. So yesterday I got the tires mounted on the wheels. So that's all good to go. I just have to decide now which brake rotors I'm going to put back on. The originals or the gold ones off the Bandit. And again, I'll remind the viewers that the color you see here is not the color the wheels are. It's much darker in person, way darker in person. For some reason, this iPhone that I'm using, this camera seems to make some colors look quite a bit different, especially the greens and the blues. So yeah, it really is not the same color as my grandmother's porch. It's much darker than that. All my body work back from the booth, so now I can start to wet sand it. It's and as I said, I shot a bit of white paint on the inside just to kind of clean it up in there so it wasn't that grotesque yellow and black and whatnot. And so yeah, once I get all this excuse me, once I get all of this wet sanded, the other thing that I'll be doing shortly is I'm going to make a bunch of templates for doing the colors. So I'm going to make a template for the top of the tank. So somewhere I have to kind of lay out, I've got a made a stencil of the decal that goes around the tank here. And so I'm going to tape that stencil on. The idea being that I want to make a template for the upper part of the tank, so that when I go to paint it, it just makes the whole process of taping more accurate and much easier. So the stripe that goes around the tank is quite narrow here, and the way that it's done is it's 2 shades of green with the white from the paint that shows in between the two. So you don't want the paint to come too far down, otherwise you're not going to see the white line when you put the decal on. So I think the easiest way to do it is to tape the stencil that I made on here that basically replicates the stripe, and then I can make a painting template that'll kind of sit over top. It'll cover this entire area that's going to be green, so right down to here. And then what happens is when I'm at the paint shop, and I'll paint kind of from here down white, down here will be white, and then basically you lay the stencil back on top of the tank, and then you tape up to the stencil to create the paint line. So that's the I did that on the ZX-7 and it worked quite well. I'm going to do something similar on the upper fairing, and I'm also going to make some templates for the side fairings as well. So hey, thanks for watching this episode. I appreciate all the views, all the comments, all the subscriptions. Thanks very much, and tune in for the next episode. That's going to wrap it up for this video. And in the next one, we'll hopefully get the bodywork off to paint really soon. And then I've got to get the 1200 Bandit torn down so I can get the engine extracted from that. So stay tuned. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really does make a difference for the channel. And I appreciate all the comments that everybody makes as well. I try to respond to as many of those as I can, if not all of them. So again, put your comments down below and tell me what you think.